Ms. Celena Aguilar and her thesis, Quality or Equality, including women and a gender-neutral standard in combat.
What was your dream when you were younger? Did you dream of becoming an astronaut, an NBA player, or a teacher? Well, imagine a young girl with dreams of becoming a soldier. She watched the news and was inspired by recruits fighting for their nation. She heard war stories from her grandfather and was enthralled. She stared in awe and amazement at veterans in uniform walking down the street, hoping one day that would be her. She trained hard and took all the necessary steps in order to fight in combat. Yet the American Armed Forces asked, can a woman, even with this much drive, determination, and desire, be suitable for combat? We see through Sergeant Leanne Hester's experience that gender can be a non-issue. In 2005, Hester's squad was attacked by an ambush of explosions, gunshots, and rocket-propelled grenades. With the other troops either injured or helping the wounded, it was up to Hester and Staff Sergeant Timothy Nine to defeat the ambush. Through teamwork and perseverance, the pair overcame 50 insurgents and earned themselves Silver Stars. It is women such as Hester that deserve a place in combat. However, not all women in America's combat units are up to her standard. With a large combat standard difference between genders, lesser qualified female soldiers are accepted into our combat units. As admirable as it is for the armed forces to include women in combat, their main responsibility is to protect the people and to defend this nation. Have they forsaken this duty by lowering combat standards so more women can qualify? What if it wasn't Hester in this position, but a lesser qualified and courageous soldier? Are the American Armed Forces moving successfully towards their main objective, protecting you? The Defense Department defines direct combat as engaging an enemy on the ground with individual or crew-served weapons while being exposed to hostile fire and to a higher probability of direct physical contact with hostile forces personnel. Women have participated in direct combat since 5th century BC. However, they were seen as inferior and undervalued in comparison to men. In America, women's role in the military began with the Revolutionary War, serving in supplementary roles such as nurses or cooks, but they could only serve as soldiers if they were disguised as men. In the 1940s, Congress passed acts allowing women to join the regular military, but excluded them from combat roles. Yet in the Persian Gulf War of 1990, 41,000 women were deployed into combat zones, and their success generated support for women in the military from both Congress and the people. Finally, in 2013, then Defense Secretary Leon Panetta decided to lift the exclusions of women in combat. Then 2 years later, former Defense Secretary Ashton Carter announced that integration plans would be submitted in 2016. A dozen other nations also include women in their combat units. Combatants are required to take the semi-annual combat fitness test, but currently there is a great difference between men and women's combat training. For example, men are to lift a 30-pound ammunition with a minimum of 91 lifts, whereas women's minimum is 60, a 31 lift difference. The difference is so outrageous that a man in his 40s is expected to complete an 880-yard sprint and a 300-yard shuttle run faster than a woman between the ages of 17 and 26. Women in combat is a controversial topic, often over the morality to include women considering the physical and mental effects of combat. Additionally, the practicality of the inclusion is doubted for reason of women's physical incapabilities affecting unit cohesion, preparedness, and possibly posing a threat to their male counterparts. Women of the American Armed Forces should only be permitted to serve in combat on the basis that they meet the same requirements as men without a lowering of standards. Studies show that women offer qualities unique from men that could benefit our combat units. However, allowing women to pursue combat roles through less stringent requirements proves detrimental to our combat units and undermines the objective of our armed forces. That is to protect the people and to defend this nation. It is for the protection of our country and the quality of our armed forces that I propose a gender-neutral combat standard. As previously mentioned, women do have a history of serving in combat. A notable example is medieval icon Joan of Arc. Defying all odds based on her gender, she led her own army into war and saved her nation. A modern-day combat hero is Major Kelly McCoy, who earned a Bronze Star for her actions in Iraq. While leading an 11-man convoy, her unit came under attack as IEDs exploded around them. Despite the panic and the chaos, she successfully led her men back to safety. Even when placed in a high-pressure situation where lives, including her own, depended on her, McCoy reacted admirably. At that time, McCoy was in a non-combat role. But if she performed this effectively in combat when in a non-combat position, then is it not a possibility she could perform just as well in a direct combat position? Did her success in combat not display her physical capability for combat, and possibly other women's as well? The only difference between the situation she experienced and the encounter she would face in a combat unit is the title of her position, a combatant. Along with these examples, studies show that women offer unique traits to combat. According to Jane Blair, a study done on distance runners from track and field records show that women with equal training as their male competitors outperform men. Researchers credit this to women having a faster metabolism, resulting in their higher endurance and success in longer runs. Women also have a higher tolerance for hot and humid conditions due to their smaller bodies, as reported by a European physiology journal. Endurance and the capacity to handle uncomfortable environments, such as extreme weather, are important qualities in a combat soldier, as units must be prepared for any possible scenario. As for mental capabilities, Professors Julia Baer and Anita Woolley found that women enhance team collaboration and group mechanism, which are imperative for combat units to perform successfully. How can a task force be expected to operate when soldiers do not trust nor work well with the people around them? Additionally, USC neuroscientist Mara Mather's study on how genders react in high-pressure situations revealed that women often make more profitable decisions, whereas men make risky judgments. In a high-pressure situation where lives depend on you, a risky judgment could be the killer of many. These aforementioned qualities of women may not be adequate to create a successful team alone, but the combination of men and women's qualities would create a more prepared and adaptable combat unit. Air Force Vice Wing Commander Lori Fenner states, "Team members must not all be the same size and have the same skills if the team wants to be successful. We maximize the team's abilities by constructing the most diverse group we can within our game plan. For example, men's larger bodies and strength are advantageous for heavy lifting, while women's communication skills are beneficial for negotiations. If interactions with adversaries occur, then negotiation skills must be present for a more peaceful resolution. With a combination of genders, there is a widened pool of strengths and abilities, thus increasing the unit's readiness for when encountering combat. As worthy as women are to obtain combat roles, these positions must be obtained the right way. Women's current standards for the combat fitness test are significantly lower than men's, raising viable concern that women are less qualified and a detriment to their male counterparts on the battlefield. Captain Lawrence Serrano comments on a study revealing that mixed gender units take a longer time to evacuate a casualty than all male units. As the wife of a Marine who deploys to combat often, that added time can mean the difference between my husband living or dying. Is it just to allow women an easier right of way to combat if it results in males suffering in our combat zones? A gender-neutral combat standard would resolve these concerns, as it guarantees that all combat soldiers have the required basic capacities to handle combat, while safely opening the combat positions to women. Many argue that women in combat is an unbiblical concept, referring to Deuteronomy 22:5. A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all those who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. The objection is that the Hebrew for anything that pertains to a man in this verse is keli giver, sometimes translated the gear of a warrior. However, these words could be translated in various ways, including utensil or man, and thus a man's items are not necessarily specified as combat gear. As there is no other explicit condemnation of women in combat in the Bible, it seems unlikely that this verse is forbidding women from wearing specifically combat gear. Quality, then equality, should be the priorities of our armed forces. Women have the potential to enhance our combat units through their unique skills and deserve a place in combat. However, this is only true once the female candidate in question has deemed herself qualified and capable. The current gender-based requirements allow lesser qualified female soldiers into combat and undermine the armed forces' main objective, protecting you. Take a moment to observe the ways of our military and question, is it being just? Is it fulfilling the purpose that it was founded for? Are you being well defended? Until the answers to these questions are yes, a change must occur. Thank you.